Now, the Bugatti Chiron became the fastest production car in 2019, and that was before the Chinese EV manufacturers had hit their stride. And recently, BYD's Yangwang U9 Extreme Electric Hypercar has gone even faster. Believe it or not, it clocked 496 kilometers per hour.
When a Chinese electric hypercar shattered Bugatti's 6-year speed record, the company did not deny it, did not dispute it, and did not rush to reclaim it. Instead, Bugatti's leadership confirmed its next hypercar, the Tourbillon, will chase the record once testing finishes. That quiet response from a manufacturer that just lost a title it held for 6 years says more than denial ever could. Why would a brand built on more than a century of engineering pride respond to defeat with calm confirmation instead of outrage? This video breaks down what that silence really means. The record no one dared to challenge. The record itself was never supposed to be easy to reach, let alone break. In 2019, the Bugatti Chiron Supersport 300 Plus took to a closed test track and became the first production car in history to clear the 300-mile-per-hour barrier, hitting 304.8 miles per hour on a single blistering run. The car generated the number using an 8-liter quad-turbocharged 16-cylinder engine.
And while it's true that the 8-litre quad-turbo W16 engine gains 50% more power, this is way more than a tune-up job.
Producing somewhere north of 1,500 horsepower, a combination of raw displacement and forced induction that represented the absolute limit of what internal combustion could achieve on 4 wheels. For an industry that had spent decades inching toward the 300 mark in increments of a few miles per hour at a time, clearing it outright in one run felt less like an incremental victory and more like the closing of an entire chapter. That is largely how Bugatti treated it. Why would a manufacturer walk away from the fastest production car title the moment it finally claimed it? The answer says less about complacency than about how differently the goal had been framed internally. Bugatti's own leadership at the time suggested the record had never been about opening a permanent arms race. It was about proving a specific, singular point. And once proven, chasing further numbers offered diminishing returns against the cost and danger of every additional record attempt. The company shifted its public attention toward other pursuits in the years that followed, occasionally returning to the record books for narrower achievements. An open-top speed record with the Mistral, for instance, without ever seriously threatening its own 300-plus mark again. That silence, whether strategic or simply confident, left the record sitting untouched for 6 full years. Rival manufacturers occasionally postured toward it. Koenigsegg's engineering teams built cars on paper capable of theoretically exceeding it. None of them actually attempted the run in a fully verified, production-legal configuration. Is it possible the entire hypercar industry had quietly decided the record was simply not worth the risk anymore? For 6 years, the evidence pointed in exactly that direction, until an entirely different kind of manufacturer, working from an entirely different playbook, decided otherwise. Context matters here, and the history behind the 300-mile-per-hour barrier stretches back further than Bugatti's own involvement in it. The McLaren F1 held the outright production car speed record for years before Bugatti entered the conversation, and Bugatti's own Veyron gradually pushed the number upward across multiple model generations before the Chiron finally cleared the barrier outright. Each incremental gain along that path required years of engineering refinement, and each record holder treated its own number, at the time, as close to a practical ceiling for what combustion engineering could reasonably achieve on public roads. Did any of those earlier record holders genuinely believe their number was permanent? or simply the best available answer until someone eventually proved otherwise? History suggests the latter, every single time. And the Chiron Supersport 300 Plus carried no real exception to that pattern.
273 miles per hour, but unrestricted, it would go on to 304 miles per hour, the fastest speed ever achieved by any production road car.
Whatever confidence surrounded it in the moment it was set, the Chiron Supersport 300 Plus was not simply another step in that sequence. It was widely treated, inside and outside the company, as the sequence's logical endpoint. Was that assumption ever entirely safe, even at the time? Engineering history rarely rewards permanent ceilings, and the assumption that no manufacturer would seriously chase the number again for the better part of a decade was always, in hindsight, a bet rather than a certainty. That bet paid off for 6 years, largely because of how narrow the field of realistic challengers actually was. Building a car capable of even approaching 300 miles per hour requires a combination of engineering resources, aerodynamic expertise, and access to a suitable test facility that only a handful of manufacturers worldwide possess. Combustion-focused rivals capable of the attempt largely chose not to make it, whether from cost concerns, safety considerations, or simple calculation that the marketing return no longer justified the risk once Bugatti had already claimed the headline. The record's survival, in other words, reflected as much about the industry's collective hesitation as it did about the specific difficulty of the number itself. China's answer to Bugatti. The car that eventually ended Bugatti's reign did not come from Molsheim, Maranello, or any of the traditional European hypercar strongholds. It came from Yangwang, a luxury performance sub-brand of the Chinese automotive giant BYD, a name that meant little to Western hypercar enthusiasts even a single year before the record fell. The standard U9 had already built a reputation inside China as a genuinely serious performance vehicle, but the extreme variant, built specifically for a record attempt, represented something else entirely. A purpose-built assault on the outright title, engineered from the ground up around a single number. How does a manufacturer virtually unknown to Western audiences arrive fully prepared for a challenge this technically demanding? The answer lies less in sudden inspiration than in years of quiet infrastructure building most enthusiasts never saw coming. What made the U9 Extreme different was not raw displacement or turbocharger count, categories where Bugatti's engineering still held a century of institutional advantage. It was electrical architecture. The Extreme runs on a 1200-volt system, half again as powerful as the standard U9's already substantial 800-volt platform, feeding 4 independent electric motors that combine for somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,000 horsepower. Each motor spins to speeds that would destroy a conventional internal combustion engine within seconds, and the car's torque vectoring system adjusts power to each individual wheel roughly 100 times per second, a level of dynamic control no combustion-powered hypercar has ever matched. Why would an electric hypercar, historically associated with acceleration rather than sustained top-end speed, be the one to finally threaten a record built entirely around top-end aerodynamic stability?
This is the Yangwang U9. It is built by BYD. This thing has 960 kilowatt of power, 4 independent motors, weighs 2.5 tons, 80 kilowatt hour battery.
The assumption for years had been that EVs excelled at the launch and struggled as velocity climbed, limited by cooling, battery discharge rates, and the sheer difficulty of managing that much power at sustained high speed. The U9 Extreme was engineered specifically to defeat that assumption. with a fixed rear wing, reworked air intakes, and an aerodynamic package built around minimizing drag rather than maximizing downforce. The same fundamental trade-off Bugatti's own engineers had wrestled with years earlier. The car was not simply fast. It was built by people who had clearly studied exactly what it takes to break this specific kind of record, and built their answer around it deliberately. The standard U9 had already spent time building credibility inside the Chinese domestic market before the extreme variant ever appeared, developing a reputation for genuinely serious performance rather than novelty engineering built purely for headlines. That distinction matters for understanding why the record attempt landed as credibly as it did. This was not a concept vehicle rushed to a test track for a marketing moment. It was the purpose-built evolution of a platform that had already proven itself in less extreme form, backed by an automaker, BYD, with the manufacturing scale and battery expertise to support a genuinely serious assault on the record. Only 30 examples of the extreme variant will ever exist, a scarcity that mirrors the exclusivity traditionally associated with European hypercar manufacturing, rather than the mass production reputation BYD carries in its more conventional vehicle lineup. The broader BYD ecosystem behind the U9 Extreme deserves its own mention, since it explains how a manufacturer largely unknown to Western hypercar enthusiasts could produce a genuinely world-class record attempt on essentially its first serious try. BYD has spent years building battery manufacturing capability at a scale few competitors worldwide can match. Originally, as one of the largest battery producers on the planet, before expanding fully into vehicle manufacturing. That foundation gave Yang Wang's engineering team a genuine structural advantage the moment the company decided to pursue a record-focused hypercar variant. Access to battery technology, thermal management expertise, and high-voltage architecture experience built up across years of mass-market production, rather than developed from scratch for a single halo project. Few rivals attempting a similar record chase would have that same depth of existing infrastructure to draw from. Could a European or American manufacturer replicate that same advantage quickly if it decided to prioritize an electric record attempt tomorrow? Not easily. Battery manufacturing expertise at the scale BYD has built takes years of dedicated investment to develop, and most traditional hypercar manufacturers have historically outsourced battery technology rather than building that capability internally from the ground up. Verified speed. Verified victory. The record fell at the automotive testing Papenburg facility in Germany, the same type of closed, high-speed oval where Bugatti had set its own mark years earlier. German racing driver Marc Basseng, a veteran of previous record attempts, took the wheel for the run that would ultimately end Bugatti's 6-year hold on the title. The U9 Extreme reached 308.4 miles per hour.
This is a Yangwang U9 Extreme, an electric hypercar with very nearly 3,000 horsepower. It's capable of well over 300 miles an hour,
clearing Bugatti's 304.8 mark by roughly 3.5 miles per hour. A margin that sounds modest in isolation, but represents an enormous gap at speeds where every additional mile per hour demands exponentially more power to overcome aerodynamic drag. How significant is a 3.5 mile per hour margin at speeds this extreme? At 300 miles per hour, the aerodynamic forces working against a vehicle scale dramatically, with even small speed increases. Meaning the U9 Extreme did not simply edge past Bugatti's number. It overcame a genuinely steep additional resistance curve to do it. The same test session also produced a new Nürburgring Nordschleife lap record for an electric production car, a 6-minute 59-second lap that demonstrated the car's capabilities extended well beyond a single straight-line number. The achievement did not arrive entirely without technical asterisks, and a fair accounting of the record requires acknowledging them. Both Bugatti's original run and the U9 Extreme's record-breaking pass were one-way peak speeds rather than certified two-way averages, the traditional standard used to rule out the influence of wind, track grade, or other external factors. Does that technicality diminish what either car actually accomplished? Reasonable people in the enthusiast and engineering communities disagree, and the dispute remains genuinely unresolved. Some point out that neither manufacturer's number would satisfy the strictest historical definition of an official land speed record, while others argue that one-way runs on a controlled test track still represent a legitimate, comparable benchmark between the two cars. What is not in dispute is which number came first and which came second, and by September of 2025, Bugatti's number was no longer the higher of the two. The Nürburgring result adds an interesting wrinkle to the broader story of electric performance at this level. While the U9 Extreme's lap time stood as the fastest ever recorded by an electric production car, it still fell short of a separate lap record set by a prototype from another Chinese manufacturer, suggesting the race toward the absolute limits of electric performance is unfolding on multiple fronts simultaneously, not simply between Yang Wang and Bugatti alone. Even inside the narrower category of straight-line top speed, other manufacturers continue circling the same target. Koenigsegg's Jesko Absolute carries a theoretical top speed exceeding 330 miles per hour on paper, a figure the company has publicly discussed but never attempted to verify through an actual record run. Theoretical numbers, however impressive, do not rewrite the record books. Only completed runs do, and for now, only one manufacturer has actually completed one that exceeds Bugatti's mark. Does a theoretical top speed carry any real weight in a rivalry defined entirely by verified numbers? Not until it is actually attempted on a track with a timing system running. And until that happens, Koenigsegg's projected figures remain a talking point rather than a genuine entry in the record conversation. The gap between paper performance and verified performance has always separated serious contenders from marketing claims in this particular corner of the automotive world, and the U9 Extreme's run mattered precisely because it closed that gap in full public view, under conditions any rival could scrutinize and, in theory, attempt to replicate. Bugatti's measured response. Manufacturers losing a title this significant tend to respond in one of two ways: loud denial or quiet recalibration. Bugatti chose the latter. Rather than disputing the technical validity of the U9 Extreme's run or downplaying its significance, Bugatti's leadership acknowledged the shifting landscape directly, confirming that the company intends to pursue new top-speed records with its next-generation hypercar, the Tourbillon, once that car completes its ongoing endurance and durability testing program. Why would a brand built on more than a century of engineering pride respond to a genuine dethroning with measured acknowledgement rather than public dismissal? Part of the answer lies in what the Tourbillon itself represents for the company. The car pairs a naturally aspirated 16-cylinder engine with a trio of electric motors.
0 to 60 in under 2.5 seconds. The power plant is a 16-cylinder quad turbo. If you drove this car flat out, it would drain the gas tank in just 9 minutes.
Producing a combined output north of 1,700 horsepower and representing Bugatti's first serious hybridization of its flagship platform. A manufacturer already committing to electrification at the highest performance tier has less incentive to publicly dismiss an electric rival's achievement, and considerably more incentive to quietly position its own upcoming hybrid platform as the vehicle capable of reclaiming the title on its own terms. That measured tone extended through Bugatti's public statements in the months following the record. There was no rush announcement of an emergency record attempt, no immediate press blitz contesting the technicalities of the one-way versus two-way debate. Instead, the company's message settled into something closer to patient confidence, an acknowledgement that the record had changed hands, paired with a clear signal that the company considered the matter unfinished rather than settled. For a brand that spent 6 years treating its own record as a closed chapter, that shift alone said as much about the moment as any single number could. There is a layer of irony worth sitting with in how Bugatti's own leadership has discussed the broader electric performance question. The company's chief executive, Mate Rimac, built his entire reputation before joining Bugatti on electric hypercar engineering, and has spoken publicly about the technical bottlenecks facing electric vehicles chasing extreme top speeds, pointing specifically to battery technology, rather than motor output, as the limiting factor holding electric hypercars back from even higher numbers. Coming from an executive with genuine electric powertrain credentials, rather than a purely combustion-focused background, that kind of technical acknowledgement.
So now we need to take all the learnings from XP and VP, but what we want to show you today is the powertrain system and dive deep into the hybrid and combustion engine of this car.
Carries more weight than a standard corporate statement. It suggests Bugatti's leadership understands precisely what Yang Wang accomplished, on a technical level, rather than simply reacting to a headline. Could that same technical understanding become Bugatti's actual advantage going forward? It is a reasonable possibility. A leadership team that already grasps exactly where electric hypercars hit their ceiling is better positioned than most rivals to design a hybrid platform specifically engineered around clearing that ceiling, rather than simply hoping raw horsepower alone closes the gap. The Tourbillon's testing program itself offers a window into how seriously Bugatti appears to be taking the challenge. Endurance and durability testing at this level typically spans many months of controlled conditions before a manufacturer risks an actual top-speed attempt, a process built specifically to catch the kind of mechanical failure that would turn an attempted record run into a catastrophic and dangerous outcome at speeds exceeding 250 miles per hour. Bugatti's stated patience around that process, rather than rushing a premature attempt purely to reclaim headlines quickly, suggests the company understands that a failed or aborted record run would do far more damage to its reputation than simply conceding the title temporarily while the right platform finishes development. A new era of speed has begun. The U9 Extreme's run did more than transfer a title from one manufacturer to another. It closed the door on an assumption the entire industry had quietly operated under for years: that outright top speed remained the exclusive province of internal combustion, and that electric powertrains, however dominant in acceleration, would always concede the extreme high end to gasoline and forced induction. That assumption no longer holds, and every manufacturer still chasing this specific record now has to reckon with an electric benchmark sitting at the very top of the list. Does one electric hypercar's record run signal a permanent shift, or simply a single outlier result that combustion engineering will eventually answer? The honest answer sits somewhere in between. Battery and motor technology at this extreme performance tier remains a young discipline compared to more than a century of combustion refinement, which means further electric gains may arrive faster than skeptics currently expect. At the same time, Bugatti's own hybrid approach with the Tourbillon suggests the industry's most storied combustion manufacturer sees electrification not as a threat to be resisted, but as a tool to be absorbed into its own record-chasing playbook. What happens next in this rivalry remains genuinely open. Bugatti has committed publicly to another attempt once the Tourbillon completes testing. Yang Wang, having proven the concept once, has every incentive to push further before any rival can respond. The record that took 6 years to fall may not last nearly that long this time. In an era where two manufacturers on opposite sides of the world,
But this is the same architecture, just scaled a bit differently for a rear powertrain of a SUV and sedan car that's going to be mass manufactured for another car company.
are now openly building toward the exact same number. The geography of this particular rivalry deserves its own note. For decades, the pursuit of outright automotive speed belonged almost exclusively to European manufacturers, with occasional American challengers entering the conversation around specific niche records. A Chinese manufacturer claiming the outright title, built on domestic battery and motor technology rather than licensed European engineering, represents a genuine shift in where cutting-edge performance engineering originates. Whether that shift continues or proves to be a single remarkable outlier will likely become clear the moment Bugatti's Tourbillon completes its testing program and returns to a track with a specific number in mind. The broader implications extend beyond just two manufacturers chasing one number. Every hypercar builder currently developing a flagship Halo model now has to reckon with a new baseline reality. The outright speed record no longer automatically belongs to whichever combustion manufacturer wants it most. That shift changes the calculus for how future hypercars get engineered from the ground up, potentially accelerating hybrid and electric development across the entire segment, as rival manufacturers recognize that combustion alone may no longer guarantee a path to the top of the leaderboard. Ferrari, McLaren, and other manufacturers building their own flagship Halo models in the coming years will be designing those cars in a landscape where an electric hypercar has already proven the outright speed ceiling is no longer combustion's exclusive property to defend. For enthusiasts who have spent decades associating extreme top speed almost exclusively with the sound and fury of massive combustion engines, adjusting to that new reality will take time. The numbers, however, do not particularly care about sentiment. They simply record whichever car crosses the timing beam fastest, regardless of what sits under the bodywork producing that speed. That indifference to sentiment is, in its own way, exactly what makes this particular rivalry worth watching closely. Every previous era of the top speed chase eventually settled into a comfortable rhythm, with a small circle of familiar manufacturers trading the record back and forth using variations of the same basic combustion formula. This moment breaks that rhythm entirely, introducing an approach to extreme performance that did not exist in any serious form the last time the record changed hands. Whatever comes next, it will not simply be a faster version of what came before. 6 years of certainty ended not with an argument, but with a quiet confirmation. And that response says more about Bugatti's confidence than any outrage ever could have. The record now belongs to a manufacturer nobody in the West was even watching a year ago, and the company that lost it has already signaled exactly how it plans to answer. Silence in this case was never surrender. It was a company choosing its next move carefully, instead of rushing to save face publicly. If this breakdown gave you the full story behind the record, leave a like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more hypercar rivalries as they unfold.